is I just find it amazing how people just kind of adapt. And I don't mean that in a good way, I mean that in a bad way. They're just kind of adapting to how things are. And that's why the powers that ought not to be, as certain YouTubers have said, do the things they do. The slow rollout, as Jason Burmis has said. It's called the slow rollout, where they roll things out slowly, incrementally. It's like putting a frog in water. You turn the heat up slowly, but not too much that the frog jumps out of the pot. Just enough so it feels a little bit warm and he gets used to it, and you crank it up a little bit warm and he gets used to it, and pretty soon that frog is in boiling water ready to die. And that's what's happening here. Slow rollout of things, not that slow anymore, but definitely slow enough that people still just kind of sit back and, oh, you know, I don't like what's going on, but whatever, what can I do? As long as I have my job, as long as I have my house, and people just kind of sit back and watch their Netflix show. They can't watch hockey, they can't watch soccer or baseball, because baseball and hockey and soccer are all not happening. They're all closed. The slow rollout, right? And people just get used to it. So now we've got the slow rollout of these businesses half open, like I've said. Lots of businesses are still closed. Movies, obviously sports events are completely closed. You can't watch hockey, you can't go to concerts. But then in another token, which I just find incredible, like, it's funny how the media can flip the switch so fast. The slow roll, you can't do certain things. You're not allowed to stay in large groups, under 50 maximum. And that's okay. Then you've got funerals. My buddy's uncle died. Yesterday was his funeral, and he wasn't allowed to go. And his uncle had a lot of friends. That funeral would have been packed with hundreds and hundreds of people, but since the situation was the way it was, the funeral only was allowed to have 10 people. But then you look at George Floyd, like I said before, no disrespect to him whatsoever, so don't make this as a racist issue. I'm just being logical here and making sense of a situation that doesn't make much sense. So you can have one funeral up here in Vancouver. My friend's uncle, less than 10 people are allowed to his funeral. But then down in the United States, you see pictures of the George Floyd funeral. They've got hundreds of people there. Not a problem. The protests, same thing. And the lockdown protests, people were frowning upon what I was doing at the end of lockdown protests, throwing eggs at us, literally throwing eggs at us. Hospital workers actually pissed off as they had their arms crossed, watching us walk down Burrard Street. I know that the organizer blocked access to the emergency route for maybe a minute or two. Maybe that's why they were pissed off, but I think they were pissed off regardless of what they saw. They were just not happy with us marching to end lockdown. We were dangerous and we were selfish, right? We were dangerous and selfish. You guys probably, some of you guys out there who aren't on board with me probably think the same thing. Dangerous and selfish. But then you don't feel the same way when people are out marching by the thousands, literally by the thousands all across the world in respect to George Floyd. And I think they should be allowed to do that just the same way I think I was allowed to do what I did. But I was dangerous, I was selfish, I was irresponsible, but the George Floyd protesters don't get the same treatment. I find that incredible. And I'm not disrespectful towards George Floyd. He was murdered not in cold blood, but he was murdered. And I understand the whole thing. I totally respect it. But what you need to understand is there's a double standard, and it's just because of the media. The media has such a stranglehold still, psychologically, on so many people that they can switch any situation and make it sound good, make it sound bad, make it sound right, make it sound wrong. And people just, when you're looking at this stuff from the outside in, it's incredible to watch the psychology of people who are not thinking. And they really aren't thinking, because if they were thinking, they would be like, yeah, that is kind of weird. How can they, how is it that one group's allowed to do this and the other group, and they're praised and they're cheered and people clap for them, they get all the news coverage saying how brave they are and this and that, and the other group is shamed, made fun of, ridiculed, thumbs down, made to feel like complete garbage for the exact same thing? It's unbelievable. And once again, no disrespect to George Floyd. I'm just pointing out the hypocrisy in the media, the hypocrisy in people in general, and just our overall society, how they have lost their way with simple things like logic, simple things like critical thinking and understanding just events and how to react to them. People just can't react to events properly. They see a situation, and if they see it on TV, that's how they feel. The way, however it is portrayed in the media is how they feel. And it's funny talking to these people, because you can totally tell who watches the news all day long and who doesn't. Because the people who watch the news all day long have the stupid fat catchphrases, the new normal, flatten the curve and all this shit. And even in how they react to situations is exactly the way it's portrayed in the news. So you can see these news heads when they're watching the news and what they're watching, and you can just see it. This is how these people are. I almost called them CNN heads, where that's how they think. Just like how CNN reacts, they think the same exact shit. They're no different. They follow the same guidelines, and they're essentially work for CNN without even realizing it. It's hilarious.